Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred. And you can see right here, I have my little collage artwork up from in our weekly IFS group. We had a special member-led group a couple weeks ago where we got to know a part and created art around it. And it was a really wonderful experience. This is actually I'll make a video about her sometime in the future, but she is, you can kind of tell she's like a ninja with these two swords, and she's the one that causes chronic pain, physical pain in my body. She let me know it's for many different reasons, but her name is Rin, R-I-N. So she's there. And today in this video, I'm actually going to take a little bit of a break from Martha Sweezy's wonderful book. There are still a few sample sessions in there I want to get to. But when I decided to do these, where I kind of go through a book and share with you, it was because I had seen someone reading a passage from Dick Schwartz' wonderful book, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For. And I really wanted to take a break and read this passage from this book for you. This, to me, is one of the best IFS books about relationships and what it looks like to have relationship inside and how that affects our relationships outside. And so I talk all the time. I use the phrase, which is from this book, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, of being our own primary caregiver. Some of you may have heard me say that many times, that inside with our parts, we are our own primary caregiver. That's actually the message of hope that IFS offers, that there is one inside that can be that secure attachment, even for our very young parts. But often we have those young parts grasp at other people outside of us to get those needs met. And then often they inevitably get disappointed because the other person is not capable of meeting their needs for whatever reason. So while other people can be really valuable secondary caregivers for us, a really healthy self-led secure attachment is when the primary attachment is actually on the inside. So I wanted to read this analogy, this metaphor that Dick Schwartz gives. So pull up a chair, lie down, have a cup of tea or a blanket, and just sit back. And you can think of it like story time. I will read this to you. This is called the magical kitchen metaphor, and it's on page 49. This is the older version, though. There's a new version, so I'm not sure if it's on the same page. So this is what Dick says. Before we explore the development and power of exiles, I want to offer a way into understanding this material. Don Miguel Ruiz, who's a wonderful teacher, uses the metaphor of the magical kitchen to describe intimate relationships. Dick says, I will embellish this metaphor to illustrate what happens with our parts. So imagine that you inherited from your parents a magical kitchen in your home from which you can obtain any kind and quantity of food. Because your parents fed you unconditionally, you learn to do the same with your many children. They are happy because they love your food. Your food is so nourishing and satisfying that they never overeat or crave candy or other kinds of junk food. You never use food to punish them or motivate them. Consequently, they trust that they are worthy of being well fed just because they are your children. They don't fight because each one knows there's plenty of food for everyone. You also give freely to your friends, neighbors, and those in need of food just for the pleasure of sharing. You know that you don't need to hoard because your food supply never runs out. But then, one day, a man knocks on your door and offers your children a steady supply of pizza and candy if they will take care of him emotionally. Because you and your kids are so full and you can see that he doesn't take care of his own kids, your response is, No, thank you. We have plenty of food of our own. On another day, a different man knocks. He is like you in that he has many children whom he feeds generously and who are happy and satisfied. He is attracted to the cuisine of your magical kitchen, but he doesn't need it because he likes to cook too, and he has plenty of food of his own. His children love playing with yours and would like to live in your house, but because they know that he will care for them no matter what happens with you, they trust him to decide where to live. You invite him to share your home, and you love how much the two of you enjoy each other's cooking. Both sets of children relish the mixed cuisine that now comes from your kitchen. Okay, so that is the metaphor of a healthy relationship. And in case you haven't caught on, the children are actually the parts inside of us. And when they are being fed regularly with the nourishment of love and attention and being seen and heard, they don't desperately grasp at it from another person, right? And if we meet another person and they aren't taking care of their own parts, we can see that we're not necessarily attracted to them. We don't necessarily want to be with them. We want to be with an equal, a self-led person, a person who is nourishing their own children so that there is freedom of choice to be with each other, not a compulsion or I have to for various reasons. So let's go on to a different example. So now imagine that you live in a different household. You're very poor. You have little food for your children. Because they are starving, the youngest and weakest of your kids cries all the time and begs you to find someone to feed them. Their desperation drives you crazy. You lock them in the basement so that they aren't always in your hair and they're not always reminding you of their suffering. Because that's the way your parents taught you to handle problem children. Just lock them away, quiet them up. As hard as you try to ignore the sobs of those young ones, however, you can still hear them through the floorboards. The urgency of their need is like a constant gnawing in the back of your mind. And some of your older children lose trust in your ability to take care of the family. They take on adult-like responsibilities, prodding you to work harder, trying to contain or calm the ones in the basement, searching for food. Because these older ones aren't equipped to handle this level of responsibility, they become rigid and controlling. They're constantly critical of your work habits and your performance, and they expend enormous amounts of energy trying to keep the basement children at bay. So as the guy with the pizza and the candy heads towards your door, the basement children smell the food before it arrives. They go insane with joy at the prospect of being fed and possibly released from their exile. They idolize the Candyman and are willing to do anything to please him. You and the older kids are hungry, exhausted, and impressed by how happy the Candyman makes the basement children feel. The possibility is very appealing of no longer having to deal with them and instead letting them attach to someone else. Consequently, despite some misgivings about the guy's demands and the poor quality of his food, you and the older children agree to satisfy his emotional needs in return for steady meals. He turns out to be abusive at times, but your younger kids fear starving and being returned to the basement, so they cling to him. Also, while he is increasingly stingy with the pizza and candy, the younger kids are addicted to it. Every time you bring up the topic of throwing him out, they override you. This is a very common dynamic, and I can relate in my own experience of people when they're in an abusive relationship. There are these younger parts that attach that are so afraid of the unknown or being alone, being abandoned, that they'll take the very minimum scraps right? And so inside the person, there are parts that are saying, leave, leave, leave. But then those young parts that need attachment are saying, no, 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 don't leave. That's too scary. So now imagine that the food in this story, so he's going to explain now this parable, this metaphor. Imagine that the food in this story is really love, and the children are the different parts of you. If you identify with the first parent who has the magical kitchen, you don't need to read the rest of this book. That's because when you love and accept your parts unconditionally, simply because they are in you, they won't be attracted by the false promises of certain other people. And when you find the right partner, your parts won't be so dependent, demanding, protective, or easily hurt that they create constant dramas or make you tolerate abuse. Instead, they each will love your partner in their different ways, enriching your experience of intimacy, secure in the knowledge that if they are hurt by him, you are there for them and will deal with him. That's a self-led system. But if you are like most people in this culture, I often say this culture, codependence is the air we breathe. We are taught that other people, we are supposed to meet our needs, and that we are supposed to meet other people's needs. It's really unhealthy. So if you are like most people in this culture, however, you learned from parents and peers to exile certain parts of you, to push down whatever was shameful and unacceptable, right? Therefore, the basement of your psyche is filled with love-starved, vulnerable inner children. Because they get so little from you, they will be obsessed with finding someone they imagine can rescue them, and out of their desperation will blind you to that person's faults. So they are likely to make you pick Mr. Wrong, and then, because they are so needy and vulnerable, will either make you stay with that person too long, will overreact to perceive hurts from him, or will try to control how close or distant he gets to you or to others. So, where can you find the equivalent of a magical kitchen, a boundless fountain of love from which your parts can draw? It's in the last place you would ever think to look, yourself. But your parts have been convinced by messages from our culture and by the way you've treated them in the past that their only hope for finding the love they crave is in the outside world. I'll read a little bit more. This notion is not entirely a myth. Your parts, or your inner children, right, can get a great deal from another person. Especially when we're children, we do need other people, caregivers, in order to survive, right? So they're not wrong. And most of these desperate parts that are in the basement are young children. So they really do believe that they need another person. However, that is only possible if they already have a loving relationship with you. So in this book, you will learn how to become the primary caregiver or caretaker, he says here, of your parts, so that your partner can be their secondary caretaker. I'll read a little bit more. Many books on improving relationships contain some version of the truism that you can't really love another person until you love yourself. In most of those books, the idea of loving yourself is held up as an abstract ideal to strive for, or else you are given affirmations to repeat as a way to counter all your negative self-talk. In this book, you will find concrete ways to tap into the magical kitchen of yourself, which will allow you to love even your carping self-critics and your basement children. And you will find that just as is true of well-fed children in the outside world, your inner characters will transform. They'll become lighter and happier when you feed rather than starve them. When that's the case, they will enhance rather than encumber your intimate relationships. Your partner will appreciate this arrangement because he or she won't feel the weight of your emotional dependence or the sting of your rage when they are unintentionally neglectful. Your parts will look first to you rather than them for their sustenance and for comfort when they are hurt. And with this arrangement, they can stay calm and not panic when your partner distances, not fear being hurt when they get close, and allow them to be who they are rather than make them into the image of the person they've been dreaming of, which is unattainable usually. When your partner cries, shows fear, or otherwise acts like one of your vulnerable parts, you can lovingly comfort them because you know how to do that with the parts of you. When they are angry, you don't have to get defensive because you don't have a nasty inner critic that is agreeing with their anger and their criticism of you. When they are shy, you don't begin to judge them since you're accepting of the shy part of you. In other words, because you can love all the kinds of parts of you, you can love your partner even when they act like those parts. It's all connected. How you relate internally directly translates to how you relate externally and vice versa. So when our parts inside are getting that constant feeding, nourishment of love and attention from the self, it sets our partner free because now they don't have to take that role to be there for us all of the time. We don't feel resentful if and when they can't. And then, like Dick was saying, when we have relationship with the parts of us that might be kind of difficult, those inner critics, angry parts, compulsive parts, extreme parts, we have experience relating lovingly to those parts. Then when we see them in our partner, we can do the same and not necessarily take it personally. We can also understand when a person is abusive, when their parts are acting out in a way that's harmful to us, that's not okay. And our self will protect our own inner children and create distance from that, right? So I wanted to just read that to you because it's just such a beautiful picture and metaphor to really get curious, right, about the parts of you if you are in a relationship where either you're very disappointed with your partner or you're just grasping and grasping at your partner, or it could be a friend or a sibling or a therapist or something like that, where you're just so desperately want them to meet your needs and they can't. Something I often say is when you feel like you so desperately want to be heard, like you can feel that urgency, that you just are trying so hard to get the person in front of you to get it, to get how much pain you're in, how much suffering you're in, how upset you are, how your needs are unmet, right? The most important thing you can do, the most valuable thing you can do, is to turn inside and really listen to those parts yourself. They really need you to get it, first and foremost. And when you do get it, and you say, wow, I validate you. You really need this. This really isn't okay with you. You are really sad, and I get it, and you make sense. When you validate that on the inside, sometimes you don't even need the other person to validate it at all. And you can recognize when other people are understanding and validating and when they're not, right? And there's a kind of a clear compass there. But you'd be amazed at how much really hearing your parts on the inside can relieve that pressure from another person, feeling that pressure that they have to do it. So I hope you appreciated that passage. I just think it's a really, really great one, and I highly recommend this book. It has a new edition now that is less expensive than this one. So it's called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For by Richard Schwartz. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.